Last night, I saw Superman the day before it comes out, and I loved it. It's one of those movie-going experiences where I couldn't stop thinking of stuff to talk about all night, which led to me taking notes until like 3 in the morning, hence the video. But there's no spoilers here whatsoever, by the way. Going in, I had a lot of reservations about whether or not James Gunn would be able to succeed, partly because I'm usually a fan of Superman in long-running serialized television, less so the films, and when I saw the Justice Gang and all the other characters in the trailers, I was sure that this would just become another pseudo-Guardians team-up movie. And I was incredibly wrong. I would go so far as to say that Superman is the first definitive movie based on the character to be released in the 21st century. And you can honestly tell that just from the title, Superman. It's not attempting to recapture the magic of a past franchise, and it's not a reinterpretation of the character that's rooted in the success of contemporary franchises with darker tones. It just ends up feeling more like a commentary about the idea of Superman rather than a movie about Superman. And that's truly the strongest part of this incarnation. It is a movie that expects the audience to come in with no pre-established understanding of who this character is, and to leave entertained and inspired, which is the root of Superman as a concept. Before I saw him in the trailer, I had no clue who Mr. Terrific was, and I expected it's the same case for newer, younger fans. But he quickly became my new favorite by the end of the movie. Same with Guy Gardner, Hawkgirl, Metamorpho, him especially, mostly because Anthony Carrigan is a national treasure. These are all characters that I, a casual comic book reader, know little to nothing about. And yet, in the span of however long this movie is, they're introduced and incorporated into the story without it ever feeling like there's too many cooks in the kitchen. My biggest gripe, however, is that in order to manage this ensemble cast, and also to avoid retelling Superman's origin again, there's a lot of expository dialogue to explain what's happened over the 3 years that Superman's existed that can, at times, sound a bit like a first draft. However, I have to remind myself that that's mostly for like kids who may not know everything about Superman's origin, and it's also only for the first 20-ish minutes of the movie. That's just sort of a necessary evil when talking about introducing and juggling a bunch of characters and ideas that most people have never heard of. And credit to Gunn's script and the performances from an amazing cast, none of the characters in this movie felt underutilized or annoying, no matter how big or small of a role that they ended up playing. Lois Lane was great and felt truly accurate to the character. Jimmy Olsen was interesting for once. The villains are actually evil here. Man, Nicholas Hoult really killed it as Lex and has surpassed Rosenbaum as my favorite version of the character. Sorry, Michael. And credit to the Engineer and Ultraman, who are these great henchmen. I feel like we've really been lacking good henchmen that are difficult to defeat, and they were just forces of nature on screen. And I can safely say that Superman is the most interesting part of his own movie, which isn't something I could always say about past projects. I loved everything about him here. His relationship with Lois, that interview scene was amazing, his connections to both his Kryptonian parents as well as Ma and Pa Kent, the scenes between him and the Justice Gang or Luthor. I just loved every minute of Corrin Sweat's performance, and he just had great chemistry with everyone. And by the end of the movie, hell, I wanted to chant Superman at the damn screen. The fact that Gunn was willing to adapt Krypto the Superdog on the big screen is impressive enough. It's even more impressive that he's one of my favorite parts of the movie. There is just so much lifted straight off of the pages and put onto the screen that it's astounding. And what's more important is that those comic accurate parts are almost always used as a way to world build and flesh out this version of Superman rather than set up later movies or something. Without spoiling at all, the film does some interesting things with Superman lore in service of this movie's plot, and I was a fan of the direction that Gunn took with it as a way to give Superman more depth and make him relatable to the audience. But I can totally see some people not liking it, but it's a small part of a greater movie. And honestly, save for a few small moments, Superman isn't really a movie that can be spoiled. I could tell you what happens and even how, but it's the execution that not only brings it home, but makes it worth seeing on a big screen. From beginning to end, Superman keeps you invested with its performances, choreography, the CG, the music, oh my god, the music, and not just the classic James Gunn thing of having fight scenes set to songs, but the original score by John Murphy deserves its flowers. Lex's theme is supremely evil, and whenever it played during whatever scheme he was cooking up, I couldn't help smiling. Superman's theme is a great play on John Williams' original score from the Richard Donner movies, and it's always used at the most appropriate times throughout the film. The cinematography, listen, whatever they're paying Henry Bram, double it. This movie is eye-catching, and it made me love the fisheye lens way more than I ever thought that I could. The flying scenes, the massive fights, the sense of scale in this movie is so impressive. The shots that Gunn and Bram were able to achieve showcase Superman's powers like we've never seen before in live action. Honestly, the entire third act is worth the price of admission alone. I will say that the main plot of the movie goes some places that I really wasn't expecting from a Superman movie, and especially for some other parts I wasn't expecting from a modern superhero movie at all, with a large chunk of the final act set in this fictional country, Barovia, that we saw in the trailers. Again, without going into too much detail, since I'd like to see the movie again at least before going into spoilers, it's just interesting to compare this to a movie like Captain America Brave New World, which was also released this year. It's okay, I forgot too, and how both tackled the tragedies in Palestine as a part of their stories. And that's not really a Marvel vs. DC thing or a Julius Ona vs. James Gunn thing. It more so just says a lot about the goals of these two movies that are based on somewhat similar characters ideologically. This isn't a movie composed of cameos, Easter eggs, or character reveals. Not that Brave New World was either, but what I'm saying is that this isn't a movie you want to see to just avoid having cameos spoiled with you or something. Like, oh no, Condiment Man is in it. Fucking, this might be the first big installment in the new DCU, but it honestly feels like we're back in the era of Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy, where a movie was made to stand completely on its own, without any major hanging threads for a sequel to yank on. Superman is a movie you should ideally see in theaters because the cast and the crew at DC clearly made it with the sole intention of being a distilled representation of the character, going beyond just getting the costume and the hair right, and managing to adapt the core of who Kal-El is, and how inspiring he is to everybody, fictional or not. I will say that this is a movie you truly need to see to believe.
Welcomes, prepare for the invasion! Oh no, kryptonite!
Can anyone stop the evil Mechanicat?
Kryptonite doesn't bother me. You can't escape the Bat-Hound. Superdog to the rescue! Superclaw activated.
Metropolis is saved! Krypto's rocket comes with all this. Other figures sold separately. Some assembly required.